The question of the hour: what does it take to be a good leader? Now, I am assuming you're here because you are curious on some tips and tools on how to maximize your leadership skills. And I am hoping that I have some secret tips and tools in my backpack that I can share with you. Before we talk about those specific things, I want you to know that in my research, I have found the definition of leadership is probably the most elusive word in the dictionary. I was looking at the definition. Well, actually, I asked Google and I was like, hey, friend, what is the definition of leadership? And the definition of leadership, according to my phone and Google, is the act of leading. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't feel like it's fair to use the word you're trying to define in the definition. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't. I just don't think that you can. And I don't think that you should. That's not fair. What do you mean, the act of leading? Cool, thanks. What a great definition. But then I backed up and I was like, maybe I did not ask the question correctly. So I picked my phone back up and I was like, okay, hey friend, it's me again. What is the definition of a leader? And the definition of a leader is the person in charge. And so if you have a short attention span and you are able to grasp hold of this super profound definition, then I think that you might find some success as a leader in your community or in your classroom. It specifically says the person in charge. So how about we just toss you in a room full of people and tell you to go lead them? See how that works out. I guess I have a longer attention span than that because I was actually able to read the definition in full. Oh, can you believe it? The whole definition, to which is a little bit confusing because on the one hand it says it's the person in charge, but on the other hand it immediately says it's the person who convinces other people to follow. Now, when we're talking about following, it kind of made me think of parents for some reason. I'm pretty confident that parents have been trying to convince their children to do what they have told them to do for years and have been unsuccessful for years. Something about being a teacher, something about the classroom experience. You can toss a teacher into a classroom full of people they've never met before in their whole life and say, hey, go convince these people that you know what you're talking about and that you can guide them to this predetermined, successful destination. And I don't know what it is, but you can toss a teacher into that room, or the teacher will walk in that room confidently and they'll be able to lead and they'll be able to convince those people in that room that they do know what they're talking about and they can help them. Now, I don't think it's quite fair here because I think that people have an innate desire to please. And so when you have, on the one hand, someone who likes teaching, wants to give information, wants to be helpful, and on the other hand, you have somebody who needs the information, wants the information, and is desiring to please the person giving them the information, if you marry those two things together, boom, you get a success story. In this kind of an environment, you get to naturally develop your leadership skills. When it comes to leadership, also, it's really cool because you get to define what leadership is. How we view our leaders are based on, our past influences as well as our past experiences. I know for me personally, I had a very narrow-minded thought process on what I thought leadership was. And it's because I saw my mom leading people, and she used to lead people with a very iron fist. She is definitely a dictator. She comes in, she tells you what to do, you do it, you don't ask any questions. There's no room for communication or for conversation, none of that. That's not how we do things. You just do what you're told. And then there's me who's like, I mean, I didn't ask for this. So you're gonna at least need to tell me why I'm doing this, how I'm doing this, but mostly just the why. Cause yeah, I didn't ask for this. So who put you in charge again? What ends up happening is we meet obstacles when it comes to being in a leadership role, when we are faced with students or people in our group who won't do what we're telling them to do because we're in charge, because it's our classroom, and because you're gonna do what you're told, which makes it really difficult when you have two different people butting heads when both are trying to get to the same destination initially. This person is trying to lead to the destination. This person is trying to follow to the destination. But these two people don't communicate well, and thereby no one gets done what they need to get done. I heard a quote the other day, and I thought it was a really cool quote. Communication doesn't happen unless the information is received. Communication doesn't happen unless the information is received. And if I want to take a step up from there, leadership doesn't happen unless communication happens, and communication doesn't happen unless the information is received. And on top of that, you get an opportunity to define what leadership is. Now, that definition of leadership should be something you should easily be able to articulate. In fact, I encourage you to head on down to the comments. Tell me what kind of leader you are. You can cheat if you want. I mean, Google is a really nice friend. It'll give you a whole bunch of terms and definitions of types of leaders, but I really want you to just kind of dig into your own personal experiences, your own personal influences, people who have influenced your leadership style, and come up with a definition that truly defines you without using Google if you can. I will also leave what I think my leadership style is down in the comments. I will tell you that I have developed my leadership style completely oppositely of my mom. I recognize that my mom was a certain type of leader. My mom led with an iron fist. For those of you who don't know my past history, and I don't know why you would, unless I've told you, my mom owned a preschool. It was her lifelong dream to own a preschool, to work with preschool age children, to teach them, to help them, to guide them. I don't know of anybody who has stepped into their calling more than this lady. I tell you what, I have never seen anything like it. If you walk into, just imagine like a large handful of 3-year-old children. They have an obnoxious amount of energy. They can't sit still. They talk all the time. They have a million questions, which I love. But I don't know who would sign up for dealing with preschool age children every single day. They're crazy. But she loved it. It was absolutely her calling. And somehow she was able to convince 3-year-old children, 4-year-old children, 5-year-old children to just do what she said do. And I'm like, I don't understand. You guys have no pushback. You have no questions. You don't want any communication or conversation. You don't need to know why. You're just going to sit down. Well, she's got you thoroughly convinced that that is the right thing to do. And they would. You would walk into a a classroom and it would be peaceful and there would be order. I mean, it's nice to walk into that as a parent because you go into a lot of preschool settings and it's very loud and there's a lot of energy, and I don't really know. It's probably very overwhelming for everyone involved, but in this particular setting, peace and happiness all around. That experience with my mom showed me that you can be successful as a dictator. She probably would not call herself that, but that is what I'm gonna call her. And I would try to emulate that, because I saw her being so successful with the students using that kind of a leadership style. And I would kind of have success, but not all the way have success. And I think that was just an internal fight because that wasn't me. That wasn't the way that I best could and should lead people. And I didn't recognize that fight within until I got a little bit older, and I was just like, you know what? I don't have to lead like this. I can be the person that's inspiring in the room because that's the person that I'm called to be. I can be the person that's motivating in the room because that's the person I'm called to be. I can be the person that lays my heart on the line and gives you all the information that you need to know and then encourages you to make the right decision because that's the kind of person I am. I was able to recognize and capitalize on what I am best at, and it put me in a better position to be a better leader, to be a better instructor, to be a better teacher. It just put me in a better place to be self-aware and understand how I can best serve, because that is the type of leader I am. Now, I asked you earlier to write down your leadership style down in the comments. And I would go out on a limb to make the assumption that our leadership styles are probably different. Your background is different than my background. Your experiences are different than my experiences. Your influences are different than my influences. And honestly, my influences turned out different for my leadership style. My mom played a big role in how I view leadership. My dad played a big role in how I view leadership. And even still, my leadership style is nothing like their leadership style, and we're family. And so I assume my leadership style is nothing like your leadership style because we didn't grow up together. When you take that into consideration, that self-awareness is gonna be your cheat code. That self-awareness is gonna be the information that you need to be a successful leader at the end of the day. When it comes down to it, that uniqueness of what type of leaders we are is also extremely crucial when it comes to the types of students, the types of people we are trying to lead. I am going to make that same assumption, take that same guess that all the students that are tossed into your classroom are unique, and that you're not going to be able to go in there and knock them over with your leadership style. Now, don't get me wrong. If you are perfecting being able to reach a wide range of students, then you are going to have much better success. If you are teaching the way that you would want to be taught, well, I'm hoping for your sake that you are in a position in which everybody thinks like you. For me personally, when I walk into a classroom, I have very high expectations. My expectations of my classroom, I don't know what your expectations are. My expectations of my classroom, my expectations of a group, I expect engagement. I expect communication, and I expect it to be a high performing environment. Those are my expectations. And since those are my expectations, my leadership styles have to be vast. My leadership styles have to be all encompassing. I have to know exactly what I'm dealing with. I have to understand that each person in the room is a unique person. Each person wants to be recognized. Each person wants to be heard. Each person wants to succeed. And I can't just give them the one-dimensional, this is my leadership style, do what I tell you to do. I have to convince them. That's my job. Now it's interesting because we get into a flow as leaders, as we should. We get into a flow and sometimes we get into negative downspouts and we make decisions for our students based on things that have happened in our classroom in the past. And I strongly encourage you to make the decision of what you're trying to get out of the group you're helping. If you're just going to make an assumption about what they are or aren't going to do, if you're going to condemn them, well then of course not. They're not going to be successful. There's no hope for them to be successful. But if your expectations are high and you keep your expectations high and you are diligent about trying to reach everyone in the classroom, I guarantee you, you will find more success. Now, once we are self-aware, once we understand the foundation of what makes a strong leader, then we can kind of start to dive into how to use some of those tips and tools to maximize our leadership skills in the classroom. One of the things that's available to us are personality tests. Have you ever taken a personality test before? I know who has time to take a personality test. Now, I think we all agree that we need a strong leadership foundation. And if you have that strong foundation, from there, you can build and create a high-performing team, a high-performing group, a high-performing classroom. One of the tools that you can also use to help you kind of tweak that foundation is building strong connections with the people in your group, which is really, really hard to do when you're a teacher. I mean, let's face it, we're tossing you into a room with 20, 30, 50, 80, hundreds of students, and we're saying, hey, I need you to connect with these students immediately. And I'm telling you that through the DISC assessment, we can make a much faster snap judgment about what we are dealing with in the classroom, thereby also knowing how to immediately handle what's going on in the classroom and also change the direction of whatever is going on in the classroom if we don't like it. Maximizing our leadership. If you're interested in learning how the DISC assessment can help you do that, check out the next video.